For many people, turning 30 is something they fear. But what if turning 30 is actually just the beginning? I started my life over more than once in my early 30s, and now at 34, I'm living a life that I am genuinely so proud of. I can honestly say I've become the best version of myself. And I want to be clear, this didn't happen because everything magically worked out. It happened because a lot of things didn't. A lot of things didn't work out. This version of my life came after a lot of confusion and uncertainty and starting over even when I thought I should have everything figured out and I should be settled down by now. And I call this chapter of your 30s the rebuild season. It's the season where you stop trying to fix your old life and give yourself permission to start building a new one. Your rebuild season is when you finally realize that your old life no longer fits. And instead of forcing it, you choose to begin again. If you're questioning your career, your identity, your direction, maybe you're questioning all at once. You are not alone and nothing has gone wrong. If you're in your 30s and feel behind, stuck, and feel like you missed some sort of invisible deadline, then this video is for you. In this video, I'm going to share what actually helped me rebuild my life in my 30s, mentally, emotionally, and practically, so you can start over without shame or panic. Because starting over in your 30s is not failure. It is the moment when everything finally clicks. Hey y'all, welcome back to Reel It In. I'm your host, Reid Cox, and this is your go-to destination for self-improvement and creating the life you've always desired, all while keeping it real. Hey y'all, welcome back to Reel It In. I'm your host, Reid Cox, and this is your go-to destination for self-improvement and creating the life you've always desired, all while keeping it real. But before we get into it, if you're new to the channel, hi, I'm Reid. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you never miss a future episode. Throw me a like, leave a comment. Now let's get into it. Okay, I am so excited to make this video for y'all because I feel like there is so much stigma around turning 30. And for me, my 30s have been definitely the best decade of my life so far. In my late 20s, I felt like turning 30 was this huge wave coming up behind me, and I just kept running, trying to get away from it. I was literally so scared about turning 30. But once I turned 30, I found this level of peace and comfort in myself that I had never even knew was possible. And by feeling at home in myself, it really created this ripple effect throughout my life that allowed me to start making the changes I needed to make and create the life I've always wanted for myself. If I knew how good my 30s were gonna be, I would have saved myself so many sleepless nights and anxiety, staying up at night worrying about turning 30 and how I felt so behind in life. The reality is you're not supposed to have everything figured out in your 20s. Your 20s are for trying new things, for making mistakes, for making a fool of yourself, for making the wrong decisions. It's for figuring out what you want and what you don't want. To begin, I'll share a little bit about my story and how I got to where I am today. I just turned 34 years old, and from the moment I turned 30 to now, my life has completely changed multiple times. I have been through multiple rebuild seasons. So I started off my 30s. I had really just been living for everyone but myself in my 20s. And I was already in this path, on this journey of really changing the way I treated myself and raising my standards for how other people should treat me, which had already caused me to start making big, awesome decisions for myself. In my 20s, I had a very big lack mentality. I was constantly living with roommates and I dreamed of having my own apartment. About 6 months before I turned 30, maybe even less, I was like, enough is enough. I'm getting my own apartment. So I started by choosing myself and getting my own apartment, which really allowed me to just take up space and relax and live the life I've wanted to live. Like I was able to live at the beat of my own drum. You know what I mean? I didn't have to deal with other roommates or any politics of living with other people. And I had great roommates over the years and lived in great living situations, but I was just really ready to be on my own. So right before I turned 30, I moved into my own apartment. But I was single. I had been chronically single all my 20s. I was dating a lot, but I never had a serious relationship. I kind of hit a point in my career that was plateauing. Like I'm an actor and I'd worked a lot in my 20s, but I was kind of at a place in my career where I just wasn't getting the jobs that I was wanting to get and something had to change. I found myself feeling just very unfulfilled, and I just kind of knew that there was more out there for me. Cut to turning 30. In that time, I have met the love of my life, moved across the country twice. I've lived in 2 different states since I turned 30. Well, 3 actually. I've gotten engaged, gotten married, I've gotten pregnant. I'm about to become a mom. We bought our first home. I have opened up an amazing new career path for myself, which lights me up every chance I get to do it. But point being, I am so much more fulfilled in my life than I was in my 20s. I live an insanely exciting life where the ball is constantly moving forward and we're just constantly in a season of change, which I personally think is a good thing. From going from starting my 30s, single, kind of bored with my life, just really knowing I wanted more, to now where I have such a fully fulfilled life, I look back and I see all these little changes that I made that led me to where I am today. And that's what we're gonna get into in this video. Okay, so let's go back to being 29 and turning 30. In my 20s, I was really living my life in a place of, when this happens, then I'll do this. So when I get a boyfriend, then I'll move in with him and get my own apartment. When I have more money, then I'll travel. Like when something were to happen, then I'll do this. And I really just decided to choose myself. So the first thing you need to do is finally choose yourself. And the reality is, when you start to choose yourself, you have to be okay with letting some people down. You finally start living on your own terms and not to please anyone else. And this really does happen kind of inherently when you turn 30. Something happens when you turn 30. It's this magical thing that happens where you stop people pleasing so much and you just ask yourself, what do I want from my life? And you stop people pleasing so much. I started to realize that when I was trying to make other people happy, I never got what I wanted and I was always unhappy. So when I finally started to choose myself in every small situation to the big situations, that's when I finally got what I wanted. Ironically, when you start choosing yourself and stop trying to people please for other people, that's when you truly start to see your life fall into alignment. Next thing you got to do is recognize what isn't working. Choosing yourself forces you to realize what isn't working, if I'm being honest. You really have no choice but to be honest with yourself about the relationships, the situations, the systems in your life that you've outgrown. Are you in a relationship that you're no longer happy in, but you're staying for whatever reason? Are you unfulfilled in your job or career path and craving a pivot? Are you bored with where you're living and have always dreamed of moving somewhere else? A lot of the time, we are settling in situations because we are afraid of the unknown. But once you actually recognize what isn't working and find the courage to actually change it, then we are cooking with gas. For me, when I realized that living with roommates was no longer working, I knew that I had to take a risk and step out of my comfort zone. I had to take a risk financially because I was going to be paying more. And that was really, really scary for me. But I knew that the risk of me staying in my old circumstances was way scarier than actually going on my own and taking the risk. And once I actually got into my new apartment, y'all, I became a completely different person. All of a sudden, I just felt fully safe to relax into this new version of myself and this new life I was creating for myself. So in your early 30s, if you know there's a big change you need to make, whether it's getting your own apartment or moving or something big you can do to really snap yourself out of your old life, do it. Because when I got my own apartment, it really was like a magic spell that really helped me, really allowed me to start moving around in the world differently. I also stopped dating men that I knew weren't real husband material. I feel like I'd been single for so long and dated so many different men that I was just kind of in a phase where I was like, I'll go on a date with whoever, even if, they're like definitely not going to be my husband. And I really stopped wasting my time doing that. I realized I just had to pivot. Which brings me to, remember, there is power in the pivot. If something isn't working out, don't be afraid to pivot. I have pivoted so many times ever since I turned 30. I mean, I can't tell you how many times we've pivoted since. A lot of times it's hard for us to make a big pivot because we think, oh, if we're making a pivot, then that means the thing that we were doing before the pivot, it means that we're a failure at it, which it's just so not the case. A perfect example of this. So my husband and I, we got together 6 months into my 30s, which is pretty crazy. We were long distance for 6 months. Then he moved to Los Angeles after 6 months. And then we had kind of 6 more months, maybe not even 6 more months before the decision was made that we were going to move to Austin, Texas. Now, that was a huge risk I took because I did not want to move to Austin. He was the one that wanted to move to Austin. But if I was being honest, I was kind of over LA in the first place. But I was wanting to move to like New York or like another big city. Austin is a big city, but it's not really what I was wanting for myself at the time. But I knew this was my shot. Like you kind of only get one shot to start over with someone like from scratch. Like he could have gone off to Austin and I could have come join him a year or two later. But I knew that the benefit of us moving together is that we would be starting over together as a team And I just went. I just knew that I had to take this leap. And I knew that if I went with him, I knew he was going to be my husband, or I had hoped he would. I mean, now I look back, I'm like, how did I like move across the country for someone who was just my boyfriend and not even my fiance? I would not advise to do that now. But I trusted my gut and I followed my heart. And we went there, and I would say we were there for 2 years total. I would say the first year in Austin was the hardest for me. I really, really struggled because I picked up and left my entire life that I built for myself over the past 13 years in 2 weeks. Like, the decision was made for us to move, and I was gone 2 weeks later. It was pretty jarring. And also just like knowing you move somewhere for a man, like that was a really tough, like that was a hard pill to swallow. Like, I was kind of like shocked that I was doing that. But the first year was really hard. I didn't know anyone there. He moved there because he had a job opportunity. He also had family there. And I was just really, really alone. And I was kind of like still like grieving my old life while wanting to be in it, but trying to make this new life work. Anyways, the first year was hard for me until the second year in Austin. I would say by the second year in Austin, I was cooking with gas. Like, I had a community. I was working on getting my Pilates certification. I'd started my blog. I had started my YouTube channel. Like, I was fully in like creation mode. And I was acting. I joined an acting class. Like, I kind of set up my life there. So I had gotten through the rough part for the first year. And then the second year was when my husband started to kind of struggle. And he didn't have the best second year in Austin. And about, I would say, after we'd been there for 18 months, maybe, we started to realize, okay, this is probably not our forever home. We got engaged. We planned our wedding. I remember when we were eloping last January in Hawaii, I just kind of knew, I sensed that a move was coming. We didn't know where. And then all of a sudden, my husband was like, we've got to move to South Carolina, which is where I'm from. And I was like, I'm not moving to South Carolina. I'm a city girl, and anyone who knows me knows that I am a city girl, and I was not moving back to my hometown. But then he kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and I saw kind of how unhappy he was in Austin. And one thing I've learned is that you're only as happy as your partner is. So I was like, okay, we're probably going to have to move soon. So we made the decision to move and pivot again, almost exactly 2 years after we got to Austin. So when we chose to pivot again, I was like, oh my gosh, like, are we failures? Like, could we have given Austin a bit more of a go? My cat had a little sneeze. But I look back now, and I'm so proud of us, because the decision was made for us to go, and we had about 2 months left on our lease. And I was like, if we already know we're going to move, we should just move. Like, we should not wait for this lease to be up. What are we going to do? Just sit around and wait for the lease to be up? That sounds pretty depressing. Do I regret moving to Austin in the first place? Absolutely not. Austin is such a big part of our story, and we grew so much there. We got engaged while we were there. We ran off and eloped while we were living there, and we made so many great friends and learned so much about ourselves, and our relationship really grew there. And I don't think I would have moved from Los Angeles back to South Carolina in like one fell swoop, you know? Like, I kind of needed like a buffer city. And we always talk about Austin being like our buffer city. So we pivoted and we moved to South Carolina. And it is one of the best decisions we've ever made. I am so happy living here, like shockingly surprised how happy I'm living here. And my husband's so happy living here too. And again, you're only as happy as your spouse sometimes. And just to have him be so happy and feel so settled, it just makes life a lot easier for me too, you know? Which brings me to the next point I want to talk about is stop forcing a life that looks good but feels wrong. Just because something makes sense on paper doesn't mean it's going to feel aligned to you. This really applies to careers, relationships, living in certain cities. I got to a point where living in LA no longer really felt aligned to me. I was kind of over it. I was kind of bored. And I was really craving something new. It definitely wasn't Austin at the time, though. It was like New York. But anyways, but on paper, it was like, oh, if you're an actress, you should stay in LA. But I was just like, I just crave something more. If you're in a relationship and your partner seemingly is the perfect partner, but you are so deeply unhappy, nothing's going to fix that for you. Like, you have to make that change. Careers. Does your career pay you really well? And you're like, well, I get paid really well, but I'm very unhappy in this job. You have got to remember that just because it looks good on paper doesn't mean it's meant for you. The moment you choose how life feels over how it appears is when your happiness level just goes way up. It just skyrockets. And sometimes burnout is your intuition screaming, it's time to make a change. If you're in a career path right now and you're just extremely burned out and you want something more, you don't have to like change your career overnight. You can start by pursuing another career while you're still in one career, and just do baby steps. But you have to know, remember, like you are able to pivot at any time when you realize that something isn't working. And when you pivot, you might be met with feelings of failure and you're going to have to deal with the opinions of other people. You might let some other people down, but that doesn't mean that you failed. Your 20s didn't fail you, they trained you. Remember, every pivot, every dead end, every wrong choice you made provided you so much clarity. When you enter a rebuild season in your 30s, it's easy to feel like you're starting from scratch. But you're not starting from scratch. You're starting with all of your past experiences under your belt, all of that knowledge you gained. I'm a firm believer that your 20s are the decade where you're supposed to throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and see what sticks. And if something doesn't work out, it is never a failure. It is just an experience. Any quote unquote failure you may have experienced in your 20s was probably a huge learning lesson and a blessing. You've got to be able to let go of your past. One of the biggest things that helped me in my 30s was allowing myself, one, to recognize what's not working, two, allow myself to pivot, and three is to let go of my past. That doesn't mean to let go of your past in a way of like you're ashamed of it or you want to act like it never happened, but just being okay with detaching from what was and being open to what's new. Never forget your past and what you learned, but no dwelling on it. One of the biggest topics amongst people in their 30s is the infamous timeline. And I'm just going to tell you right now, your timeline is fake. And you're letting it ruin your life. Society's deadlines are made up. Marriage, money, babies, career, having it all figured out by your 30s. It's just a lie and it's not possible. When you rush to meet certain deadlines in your life, you're really just gonna be forced to make misaligned choices. That's why you see lots of times when people feel like they have everything figured out by their 30s, they end up having their lives fall apart in their 30s because they made misaligned decisions way too soon and they tried to force what wasn't working. You have to trust the divine timing of your life. If I was freaking out so much about not having met my husband by the time I turned 30, I might have gotten into a relationship that wasn't meant for me and stayed there and then not been single to meet my husband. And my husband and I grew up together when we were kids, but we hadn't seen each other for a while. But when we reconnected when I was 6 months into my 30s, it was kind of like a huge sign from the universe that like everything's going to be fine. Your 30s are going to be fine. It's all going to work out. If I had been in such a rush to meet someone sooner than that, I mean, I was kind of in a rush, but like if I really was like trying to force something, I probably would have settled in a relationship that was not right for me. And when my husband came into my life, it really took my life on a completely different trajectory than I thought. I thought I would be married to like another actor or director or creative and living in Los Angeles or New York. Never in a million years did I think I'd be with my husband. But I have been shown a greater happiness than I ever could exist by being with him. And we've been on such an adventure. I have surprised myself in so many ways. I have learned so much about myself. And you know what? I think life is way more exciting when things don't go as we planned because nothing's exciting about things going as we planned. That's just living in control. Which brings me to, you have to embrace changes that you never saw coming or expected. If I hadn't embraced moving to Austin or moving back to South Carolina, it would have made life a lot harder. Also, embracing starting new career paths, starting content creation. That was a huge risk for me too, and I never saw that coming. I thought I was just going to be just acting for the rest of my life, but I started to realize I wanted more. I didn't want to just keep playing another character. I wanted to create something with my own voice and my own heart. One of the biggest lessons in my 20s is to embrace change and embrace the unknown. And I mean, for us, like moving around so much and so much change, I realized like I used to be so afraid of change and moving and like things not being stable. And now after I've done it a few times, I'm like, it just is what it is. And it's kind of exciting and fun and I can do it. But at the time, my nervous system wasn't strong enough to actually think I could make this many changes, But once you prove to yourself that you're actually capable of going through changes and coming out the other side, change just becomes Easy breezy. You have to remember that the life you planned was built with limited information. You made all of your plans as a different version of you than who you are right now. And the person you are now is probably going to want different things than who you once were when you were making all your plans. Growth changes what you want, and that's not a problem. That's a blessing. I think it's truly rare to want the same things throughout your life. And if you're wanting the same things throughout your life, you're not really changing enough. Like, I wanted completely different things a decade ago. And as I've gotten older and I have more knowledge and I've had more experiences, I want different things. It's scary when you want different things, because when you want different things, you kind of have to let go of your old identity. Did I think I'd be 34, about to become a mom, married, living in my hometown, and creating YouTube videos? No. But do I love it? Yes. And when we cling to old plans, that's what often creates dissatisfaction in your life. So if you want something different, don't be afraid to change what you want and your plans. Because the reality is that your old dream life might be too small for you. You might have outgrown it. When you made your old plans, you couldn't have imagined what you didn't have the capacity for yet. Sometimes your imagination hasn't caught up to your potential. Just remember that predictability kills growth, and your comfort is no longer the goal. Fulfillment is. The truth is, in my 30s, happiness really came when I realized that I had to let go of how I thought my life was supposed to look. Releasing expectations around age, success, timing of things. You've got to choose how life feels over how life photographs. Alignment over aesthetics. This is your one life you have. You want to be happy and feel fulfilled and not live for how you think other people think your life is. It's funny how when you stop having expectations and focusing on the lack of what you don't have, that's when the good things come in. One of the many pluses of being in your 30s is that you stop caring about things that don't matter. You stop caring so much about having the perfect body. You stop taking things so seriously. It's almost like a weight is lifted off your shoulders. You start feeling more confident in exactly who you are without having to make any drastic changes, because you fully accepted who you are and where you're at in life. It's really a beautiful thing. I struggled with eating disorders all of my 20s, and I just really struggled to fully accept myself as I was. And something about turning 30, in the act of choosing myself, in the act of getting out of misaligned situations, I was able to drop the eating disorders because I started to actually enjoy my life and love myself and love my life. You really just let go of the things that no longer serve you in your 30s, and it's a really beautiful thing. And the biggest thing I've learned in my 30s is this: you cannot rush alignment. You can't fake it. Nothing in my life that truly mattered ever happened because I was trying to force it or rush it or trying to beat the clock. It happened when I trusted myself enough to move when it felt right, even when it didn't really make much sense to anyone else. Your timing is not broken. Your path is not delayed. You are not late to your own life. So much of the pressure we feel in our 30s is comparing our behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. And it's easy to find ourselves chasing milestones that weren't even designed for us. But when you stop racing the clock and start trusting yourself, everything changes. You make better choices. Your relationships are healthier. You build a life that actually supports you instead of drains you. And trusting your timing doesn't mean to sit on your hands and do nothing. It means to move with intention instead of fear. It means choosing what feels aligned rather than what looks impressive or the right thing to do. It means allowing your life to unfold in ways that feel expansive and not rushed or forced. And I promise you this: the things that are meant for you will not miss you. What's truly yours will meet you when you are ready, not when you're pressured or performing or trying to make something fit. If you're in your 30s or in a rebuild season right now, I want you to hear this clearly. You aren't starting over because you failed. You are starting over because you finally see yourself clearly. You are starting over because you finally know yourself. Your 30s aren't about catching up. Your 30s are about coming home to yourself. So take the pressure off, release the timeline, trust the process. Your life is unfolding just how it's supposed to, and your best times are still ahead. If this video resonated, I'd love to hear from you. And go ahead and send it to a friend who you also know is in a rebuild season. Thank you all so much for joining me, and I'll see y'all next time.